Welcome back to Website and TV. I'm Gemma Howden. Today I'm joined by Thomas Svensson, who's a digital marketing consultant based in Sweden, and we're going to be talking about the Swedish and Scandinavian markets. Hi Thomas, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for being here.
So, firstly, just can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in the digital landscape in Sweden and the rest of the Scandinavian markets right now?
I think it's different trends that is moving around. It's the same as the international trends.
Yep.
GDPR is right now is a big threat everyone is scared about. And then we have certain industries in Sweden that are growing much more than others. Like we have a big gaming community and a big startup community as well.
And what about the opportunities then for international businesses thinking about targeting those markets? You mentioned, say, for example, the gaming sector. Are there any sectors that, from an international perspective, are really interesting right now?
Well, I think that there are many sectors that could target and look into that where we have fairly weak competition in Scandinavia, like finance, also like in fashion, etc., etc. But also always bear in mind that there are fairly big cultural differences between Sweden, Denmark and Norway. Sweden is about 10 million, Denmark and Norway 5 each, and Finland is a completely different area, so you can't mix those together.
Yeah. I think there's quite often a common conception in other markets that you can kind of lump all of the Scandinavian countries together and that you can treat them in the same way. Like you say, they are different countries. What are the significant differences that perhaps people in the UK or other markets don't really understand?
Well, there's the language barriers, of course. So like most Swedes up north will not understand the Danish language. They have and also you could say that they have a bit different attitude in many places. So I think that you have to adapt to each market individually. Yeah.
And obviously, there's also a kind of understanding that most people in Scandinavia do speak English pretty well, or that is the experience, that generally the level of English is quite high. How then appropriate is it to kind of target those markets using English, and does that vary depending on the product you're selling or the sector you're working in?
I have the illusion that I speak fairly good English, and the illusion. When I come to more complex issues, I prefer to have it in Swedish. Also, there is a big difference between the legal structure in Sweden and the legal structure in the UK. So the legal heritage of Sweden is more like the German legal system, which is much, much different from the UK. So when you get with an American contract or a UK contract to a Swedish client, they really freak out because they've never seen so many pages printed.
So it's not just about even the language, it's also about the way that you do business and making sure that you're localizing the content itself rather than just the language.
The content, the sales process, the legal structures, yes.
And what are the kind of mistakes then that you see maybe international businesses making when they're coming into Sweden or other markets? What are the things they kind of get wrong?
Well, a friend of mine, we tend to have, we prefer more of a modest design. So one example I really see that always fails is when you take a very aggressive sales pitch on your website. That will be perceived as fairly aggressive, and therefore they will doom to fail.
So for businesses who are targeting that market, where should they be looking to kind of get advice or to take ideas to understand what it is that they should be localizing, how they should be localizing?
Even if it's a fairly small market, I would say find a local partner that could provide you with the knowledge of the market. And also the search behavior is way different than other markets, like Germans search in a certain way, and English search in a certain way, and the Scandinavian search in a certain special way. So I think that the localization has to be more or less made by like a native. You wouldn't hire me to do UK marketing, right?
No, absolutely.
No.
So you mentioned that, for example, an aggressive sales pitch doesn't work, and we know that there are different things that, users in different markets kind of expect to see on a website or will help them make that decision. In some, it's maybe reviews, or it might be certain types of payment options or delivery options. Is there anything specific in Sweden, say, for example, that, users would really expect to see on a website and would be put off if it wasn't there?
One thing that's a really, really big thing is that we have a tendency to lean towards invoicing instead of credit card payments. and then there are Swedish services that will provide that the possibility to the invoice, and the reason why is that we have a payment system called the gyro system in Sweden, which has a very, very high penetration there. And that's, I think that is one thing that everyone expects to be able to pay with.
Yeah, and if you can't, you're going to be less inclined to buy from that website. And then what about kind of social channels and brand engagement on social? Because we obviously know, social is important, and I'm sure that in Scandinavia it's exactly the same. Facebook is popular, Instagram is popular. How do Swedish users kind of interact with brands on those platforms? Do they use it for that kind of approach?
For sure.
Yeah.
I would say the similarities is very high to the UK market. More or less the same behavior there.
Yeah, so you've really got to invest in a social presence if you...
Yeah.
And does that kind of span every industry, including B2B businesses, or is it more...
Well, the B2B business it's I think the LinkedIn penetration is really, really high in Sweden as well. So LinkedIn is really critical for B2B in penetration.
Yeah. And then what kind of level do we see at the moment of international businesses coming into Sweden? Is it happening a lot, or are there kind of really big opportunities for businesses to kind of target those markets? Are they a bit underutilized?
Are you talking about SEO agencies, or you're talking about normal companies?
Any companies, yeah.
Well, I think, as I've been working in the UK as well, the PPC levels are much, much lower. The competition level is much, much lower. I say in the UK perhaps you have like 50 or 100 big insurance companies. In Sweden we have 5, which is it's a different level of competition. So it could be on a long tail, so to speak, it's a very cheap market to go into. Yeah.
So there is quite a lot of opportunity if you do your research, do your planning, and actually really understand where those opportunities are.
Yeah, that's for sure. Mostly, I think the UK websites tend to be fairly okay working in Sweden, as long as you do the cultural adaptations and make sure that you have the correct payment system and improve the legal structures.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it was great to talk to you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me.